emergency in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of our commission members, staff, and the general public. Today's HRPDC meeting is being held virtually and electronically via Zoom. These electronic meetings are required to complete the essential business on behalf of our region. Per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, we posted a meeting notice, agenda, and supporting documentation for this meeting on the HRPDC website for public review. We also provided electronic copies of this information to our commission members and other interested parties and posted it on our website. Today's meeting is being live streamed so that our residents can view these discussions live as they occur, and is also available for viewing on our Regional Connection YouTube channel. The meeting is also being recorded and will be available after the meeting through the HRPDC website. Members of the public were invited to submit public comments in advance of today's meeting via both email and phone call. Madam Chair, I will report that no public comments were received as of 48 hours before today's meeting. So before we begin today's meeting, I'd like to just review a few housekeeping rules. First, we ask that we all remain on mute until our chairperson calls on us to provide input. That includes, of course, both as we multitask our computers and our cell phones. Please identify yourself when speaking or providing a motion or a second. And we beg your forgiveness on this, but all votes taken today must be by roll call. Now, Madam Chair, Ms. Kelly Arledge will serve as your clerk today, and will call the roll for all votes that we take. Finally, on behalf of our organization, the PDC and the Hampton Roads region, thank you all so much for your work and for your continued commitment to our community. Madam Chair, I'll turn that back over to you.
Thanks so much, Bob. So I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is approval or modification of the agenda. I'd like to identify the proposal to modify the agenda to add COVID-19 response update as an agenda item following the consent agenda, and would like to entertain a motion if anybody would like to move.
Mayor Tuck, so moved.
Hello, Ward.
Bobby Dyer, second.
That's okay. You got to.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. Are there any questions or are there discussion on this movement of this agenda item? Okay, if not, Ms. Arledge, will you conduct the roll call vote?
The City of Chesapeake, Mr. Best.
Yes.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Geis. City of Franklin, Mayor Rabel,
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett,
Yes.
Gloucester, Mr. Bonani, Mr. Fedors,
Yes.
Hampton, Mayor Tuck,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Bunting,
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty,
Aye.
Mr. Keaton,
Yes.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower,
Aye.
Mr. Stevens,
Aye.
Newport News, Mr. Jenkins,
Aye.
Mayor Price,
Aye.
Ms. Rolfe,
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander, Ms. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. McClellan,
Aye.
Dr. Filer,
Aye.
Pecosin, Mayor Helsel, Mr. Wheeler,
Aye.
Portsmouth, Mayor Glover,
Aye.
Mr. Pace,
Aye.
Smithfield, Mayor Williams, Mr. Stallings,
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Suffolk, Mr. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Surrey, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Rollins, Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer,
Aye.
Ms. Henley, Mr. Jones, Mr. Tower, Ms. Wilson, Ms. Wooten,
Aye.
Mr. Duhaney, Williamsburg, Mayor Pons,
Aye.
Mr. Trivett,
Aye.
York, Ms. Knoll, Mr. Morgan.
Aye.
That concludes the roll call.
Ms. Arledge, if I want to be certain, Ms. Knoll, were you able to issue a vote, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Knoll was a yes, and I see Mr. Tower is on. Mr. Tower, were you able to register your vote, sir?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ms. Arledge, does the motion carry?
Yes, sir, it does.
Thank you. Madam Chair, back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. So the next item on the agenda will be to public comments. And Bob, I believe you said that there were no public comments previously submitted.
That's correct.
So at this time, are there any public comments that have been received outside of the public comment period that we need to address, or can we move on to the next agenda item and your executive report?
No, ma'am. We have not received any comments up to meeting time, so I would
Okay.
recommend we move forward.
So can I turn the meeting back over to you, Mr. Crum, for your executive director report?
Yes, I'm going to be brief, but there are two things that I'd like to highlight out of my report today. My monthly report is always enclosed. You can please forward me any questions or comments you may have. But one of the things that we're going to add, that we've added to the agenda after the consent agenda, is the issue of the COVID-19 response related to vaccinations. I just wanted to highlight some of the work that your 17 CAOs have been doing, and some of the things that have happened as a result of that work. Your chief administrative officers meet on an as-needed basis, many times, multiple times per week, together or in subcommittees. And some really important things have come out of that. First off, you have pulled resources here at the PDC to do a public outreach campaign to make our general public aware of things they can do to stop the spread of COVID-19. And they're the ABCs and the basics, but again, they're things that we need to do, such as social distancing, washing hands, using hand sanitizer, being smart, staying away from the crowds, so that we can get back to doing all the great things that we all miss about Hampton Roads and the 757. The video that was created was extremely powerful, and we're really proud that Cox Communication has agreed to run that as a free public service announcement. That video cost our region $10,000, and frankly, it was a great deal. We wouldn't have got that working alone. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight. The second item is, as you're all aware, the federal government has provided utility relief assistance money to our residents who have been impacted by this terrible pandemic and have not been able to meet their utility bills. Your public information officers again coalesced around this issue and worked through the HRPDC, and we're really proud about the public information push that happened to make your residents aware of the opportunity that they ought to contact HRSD, that they ought to contact your localities and ask about utility relief assistance. Cox Communication again is running this as a public service announcement, and really excited to report that as of today, over 20,000 accounts in our region have received assistance through this program. Over 20,000 accounts. And there are thousands more that are queued up. And I think that's going to continue to increase. Madam Chair, I just wanted to point that out as some of the things your CAOs have been leading. And I think they're producing great results as we all work through this terrible pandemic together. So, Madam Chair, in the spirit of time, I'll send it back over to you.
Thanks very much, Bob. I appreciate that. The next item is to go through the consent agenda as presented in your packets. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Ella Ward, approve the consent agenda as an offended. Could you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
motion. Is there a second?
William McCarty, second.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or discussions about the consent agenda? Hearing none. Ms. Arledge, will you do another fun and fast roll call vote?
Chesapeake, Mr. Best,
Yes.
Ms. Ritter,
Yes.
Dr. Ward, Mr. Price.
Oops,
Yes.
aye. I'm sorry. Did you get mine?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I was muted.
Mr. Geis,
Yes.
Franklin, Mayor Rabel,
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett,
Yes.
Gloucester, Mr. Bazzani, Mr. Fedors,
Yes.
Hampton, Mayor Tuck,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Bunting,
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty,
Aye.
Mr. Keaton,
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower,
Aye.
Mr. Stevens,
Aye.
Newport News, Mr. Jenkins,
Aye.
Mayor Price,
Aye.
Ms. Rolfe,
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander, Ms. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. McClellan,
Aye.
Dr. Filer,
Aye.
Becosin, Mayor Helsel, Mr. Wheeler,
Aye.
Portsmouth, Mayor Glover,
Aye.
Mr. Pace,
Aye.
Smithfield, Mayor Williams, Mr. Stallings,
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Suffolk, Mr. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Moore, Surrey, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Rollins,
Aye.
Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer,
Yes.
Ms. Henley, Mr. Jones, Mr. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson, Ms. Wooten,
Aye.
Mr. Duhaney,
Aye.
Williamsburg, Mayor Pons,
Aye.
Mr. Trivett,
Aye.
York, Ms. Knoll, Mr. Morgan.
Aye.
That concludes the roll call vote. The motion carries.
Ms. Arledge, if I may circle behind, Ms. Knoll, I wanted to confirm that was an affirmative. Okay. And Mr. Dehaney, were you able to cast your vote, sir?
I got his.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Arledge. Does the motion carry?
Yes, sir, it does.
Fantastic. So, Madam Chair, back to you.
Great, thank you all. So we're going to take up the first item, which is now our new agenda item that was approved earlier, the COVID-19 response update. Bob, I believe you and Hampton City Manager Mary Bunting and Southampton County Administrator Michael Johnson are going to talk through and provide a presentation, and then we'll open the item up for discussion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commission members, we appreciate your willingness to add this item for discussion, which I believe you'll all agree is the #1 item for our communities and our region at the current moment. I think that what I would just introduce is that throughout this pandemic, your chief administrative officers, led by Mary Bunting as chair and now Michael Johnson as vice chair, have met on an ongoing basis as many times as 3 to 4 times per week to align efforts and to coordinate regionally on how we respond to this terrible pandemic that's impacting all of our communities in our region. In the past couple of weeks, that focus among your chief administrative officers has really transitioned to the issue of vaccinations within our communities. At a high level, I think what I will say is that there is much frustration in our community about the speed of the rollout of the vaccinations, about the confusion about the rollouts of the vaccinations, and about inconsistent approaches that are being used throughout the region in various health districts, which cause a lot of confusion. If I could pause there, we're picking up some background noise, I believe. Thank you so much, sir. Approximately 2 weeks, about 10 days ago, your chief administrative officers held a call and appointed a subcommittee to dive further into this issue of the vaccination rate. They appointed 4 CAOs from the peninsula and 4 CAOs from the south side. And I called a couple meetings of that subcommittee. And that subcommittee actually held a series of meetings, including one with Dr. Danny Avola, who was recently appointed by Governor Northam to lead the coordination of the vaccination rollout. Through that conversation has come a number of continuing concerns that our CAOs and the leadership of the HRPDC, Ms. McClellan and Mr. Jenkins, believe really needs to be addressed in a quick manner. Our CAOs met yesterday again, all 17 of them, and they helped me craft a letter. And Ms. McClellan and Mr. Jenkins and others, thank you so much for your input on that overnight. And this morning, we sent a draft letter to all of you as HRPDC members to ask that you consider today taking action to approve this letter and authorizing our PDC chair and vice chair to sign the letter this afternoon and send it up to the governor. Madam Chair, because of the quickness of this, I would like to ask permission if I could share a screen, and I'd like to go through the highlights of that letter so our commission members understand exactly what we're proposing.
Thanks, Bob. Please do.
Okay. Can everybody see that share screen?
No, sir.
Not yet.
Let me try that again. That was my fault. I'm sorry about that. That should be better in a minute.
There we go. That looks
Did
good.
that come up? Okay. That was
Yes.
my user error. My apologies. Okay, so this letter that you all have in your inboxes this morning would be written on behalf of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, representing 17 local governments and 1.7 million residents in our region. Respectfully requesting the governor's assistance to increase the rate of vaccinations in our region. We're very concerned that our Commonwealth ranks very low. Frankly, we're 4th from the bottom as compared to other states in the rate of rollout of these vaccines on a per capita basis. At the current rate and the number of vaccines being provided to our cities and our counties, it would take at least 12 to 16 months for our population of Hampton Roads to be vaccinated. And we know that this is just not acceptable. And I want to stress that that projection of it taking that long is really based on the level of vaccines that we are receiving in our region today. It's just not enough. We want to stress that we're just not pointing out a problem, but we stand ready to help. Our 17 county administrators and city managers stand ready to assist. Our cities and counties have available staff that can administer vaccinations. We can also offer spaces as clinics to administer large-scale vaccinations. We want to stress we're mobilized and we're ready to move quickly, but we need their assistance at the state level. We need agreements in place to open clinics, and we need the authority to allow our local government staffs to administer the vaccine to our residents. Our city managers and county administrators are saying that we have many staff qualified to do this, but we need the authorization to do that. And our city managers and county administrators stand ready to meet with the governor to discuss the mobilization of these efforts. To make the effort successful, what we've heard from the CAOs are a number of things that we want to stress. And I beg your patience as I go through these, because these are such critical points impacting us all. First, it's clear to our CAOs that each health district is approaching this effort in an inconsistent manner, and that's causing confusion and frustration across our region. And the CAOs want to stress, we understand operational flexibility, but this situation has created vast inconsistencies across our region regarding who's included in what phase and how quickly people are getting vaccinated. We believe that the ability of residents to receive vaccination should not be based on what health district you're in, but it should be based on need and where you fall within the criteria established by the Department of Health. The first point leads to our next concern, and that's about equity, frankly, social equity. We're very concerned that if this vaccination program continues on its current path, that our disadvantaged populations will have less access to vaccines due to the health district in which they are located. And we don't think this is right. And we really initially want to bring to everybody's attention. Thirdly, it's very obvious that this pandemic has stretched and overstressed our health districts. They've been underfunded over time and they are stretched thin. And they don't have the resources and structure to respond in a timely manner. Our CAOs believe that the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, VDEM, has broad experience in responding to emergencies, and that the governor should consider bringing them into this process to provide oversight for the vaccination rollout. Next, we think the Commonwealth needs to provide clear guidance to its health districts to stratify and prioritize personnel who should be considered in the Phase 1B effort. We note that there are different interpretations and policies across our health districts in Hampton Roads. Some areas are being vaccinated with different personnel. Others can't get their police chief vaccinated. These inconsistencies must be addressed. After these clarifications are made, we think a public information effort that's clear and concise to our residents, that explains the basics of the who, where, and when of the vaccination program is needed. We feel that as we increase the rate of vaccination in our region, though, that we also got to be certain that we maintain adequate funding and staff to do continued testing. Testing's got to continue to be an important part of this strategy. As of this writing, based on the information we have, it's our understanding that only 1/3 of the vaccines that have been distributed in Virginia have actually been administered, have actually been a shot in somebody's arm. We need this to happen in a more expedient manner, and we believe protocols should be established that ties vaccine distribution numbers to those localities that can produce the most maximum throughput. In other words, let's not send vaccinations places where they're going to sit in freezers. Let's send it to places where we can move them through and get them on the street. And that our concern shouldn't be on political boundaries. Let's establish regional places with the resources and all residents can get there on a need basis. We think it's important that our health districts reinforce and strengthen their partnerships with our major healthcare providers. We ask the governor's help in that regard. Number 9, Patrick Dehaney, I know you brought this up many times from Virginia Beach. Many of our local governments have prioritized the support of the vaccine rollout as priority number 1, which it should be, and have reappropriated funding from other efforts to support our vaccination efforts. We know you're all recording and documenting these expenses. We want to ask the Commonwealth to consider a reimbursement program to offset these unbudgeted expenses. Couple more and then I'll wrap up. We have also learned, and by the way, we want to stress this is good news. We have learned that many of our active duty and retired military personnel and their families are successfully obtaining vaccines through the military. And really for us, since active and retired military personnel and their families represent over 300,000 people in Hampton Roads, this is very positive news. What we have understood, though, is these numbers are not showing up in the numbers being produced by the Virginia Department of Health. And we need to understand how many people are getting vaccinated through the military and help us track that progress. So we're asking for the governor's help in clarifying that question. And then finally, we believe, just like us, there are localities across the Commonwealth that want to help. We are respectfully requesting the governor to appoint a small working committee of 6 to 8 city managers and county administrators from across Virginia. That working group can provide feet on the ground and reconnaissance on the ground back to the governor on what's working and what's not. Meet with the governor on a weekly basis or more is needed to really come up with some solid strategies to increase this rate of vaccine rollouts. We want to ask that 1 to 2 members of this group be from Hampton Roads, and so we can offer our expertise. So, Madam Chair, I thank you and the commission members for your patience. Madam Chair, I might turn it over to our CAO Committee Chair, Mary Bunning, to see if Mary has anything to add to what I presented. Mary?
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Chairwoman. I've been asked just to say a few words, and I think Bob did a great job summarizing our efforts. I do want to stress that I think the fundamental issue is the lack of steady vaccine supply, which we all hope will be solved by the incoming Biden administration. In the meantime, some progress is being made. The regional CAOs and others, as Bob have said, have been very involved. And I want to acknowledge the role of our health systems, Centera Health System and Riverside Health System in particular on the peninsula. And there may be others that I'm not aware of, but they have really stepped up and tried to help with some of this vaccine supply issue. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that. I do want to stress that the frustration of your local government administrators is that all of us have been willing to put supplies and resources into the pot. We do understand, as Bob mentioned, that our health systems have been historically underfunded by the state, and that's what's stressing the system. And that's why all of us, in whatever capacity we could, have offered facilities, EMS providers. In the case of my city, we have a great partnership with our school district. They offered school nurses. We could be vaccinating many more people if this help would be accepted and move forward aggressively. And there has been recent progress. I do want to acknowledge that. But the challenge has been some health districts in the area have accepted help faster than others. And in doing so, that has meant that some health districts have been able to get more vaccine faster than others. And that's really leading to true social inequity issues. And just to illustrate this point, and talking with Dr. Avula, he did share that in an ideal world, we would be getting vaccine based upon our per capita amounts. Hampton, and I only know Hampton's number, so I apologize, I don't know anybody else's number, but if we were getting our allotted amount by population, we would have a ratio of 100%. Our ratio is 30%. So that's really troubling. And when we look at a lot of localities statewide that have been able to move quicker into 1B, we find that they're either wealthier districts or they're districts where there's singular locality, singular health district. Again, just as a point of illustration, the peninsula has 6 localities and 1 health district. Those 6 localities' population exceed the population of Virginia Beach. Yet, for all 6 localities, through VDH's health clinic, we're only getting 1,000 vaccines a week. Whereas other larger localities, in terms of a singular district, but smaller than us in total population, are getting anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 vaccines a week. That's the problem. And so we really need to collectively solve that. We don't begrudge anybody or any health district or any city getting vaccine, but we need to make sure that our disadvantaged and lower income populations are not left behind. And that is something that is worrisome and troublesome to all of us. We do absolutely agree with the points that Bob has put out. I will make one note. The reference to tying vaccines to those with the most throughput needs to be clear that more throughput could happen in every district if the locality assistance was accepted. And so if we just go on the throughput of the health district, again, we get back to some of these inequitable situations, but the localities are all willing to put in vaccinators and facilities and the whole 9 yards. So we want our help to be accepted readily, and we want to then be able to rock and roll because we know that localities can solve this when the vaccine supply starts to flow more regularly. Unfortunately, if we wait till the vaccine supply starts to flow more regularly, we're still going to have some of these logistical issues that are very real and outlined in Bob's letter. So in the interest of time, I won't say more. We have been working on it very diligently, do have a lot of frustrations. I do see optimism, again, because the health systems have really stepped up to the plate And I think our health districts do want to accept our help. There's just been a lot of bureaucratic red tape that's kind of been in the way. And if we could get the governor's attention, I'm sure a lot of that could be solved and eliminate these problems, not just in our region, but throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. Crom. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, hold on one second here, Mayor Tuck. Mary, do we want to also hear from Michael Johnson, or are you speaking on behalf of all the CAOs?
If he would like to speak, we certainly welcome it. I think I was designated to speak for all of us, though.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And Mayor Tuck, my apologies. I'm gonna have to defer to Councilwoman Doyle had her little hand raised, and then I'll come to you afterwards. And if you all would like to speak, if you locate at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand element. I'll try and keep track there. I think we're gonna have a very robust discussion. So I appreciate your comments, and I'll start with Councilwoman Doyle from Norfolk.
Good afternoon, Mary. Wonderful summary. Thank you for your letter last week with all the CEOs as well. I appreciate that you all acted quickly. I fully support this letter. The governor's speaking at 2 today. Do we have any idea what he's going to say?
I don't. I will tell you that oftentimes we get no heads up as to the content or even necessarily the fact that there's going to be a press conference. So there may be some on our regional call today that do have information, but I do.
Okay, so I'm going to drop off before 2 so I can see that, but he is speaking at 2, and I fully support this letter. And frankly, I'm just aghast at the fact that our region is the last region to go 1B. And I think, to your point, Mary, it has in large part to do with the capacity and capability of our local health districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mayor Tuck, and then Ms. Ritter will come to you after that.
Thank you. I'm looking for my raised hand. I don't see one down here. But that said, I'm happy that our City Manager Bunning pointed out what appeared to be a contradiction in talking about throughput as well as getting more vaccine, because it seems if you're talking about throughput, then localities that are able to get more people vaccinated would get the supply that we were hoping to get here. So thank you for making that clarification, Manager Bunning.
And Mayor Tuck, along those lines, if I can follow on, I heard what you were saying, Mary, and I agree. So I think we need to clarify the language, and I'd like to make sure that we get that tightened up before we leave. I think the point today is what we're trying to make is that if you give us the opportunity and we show that we have the capabilities in-house or with the state help, that we want the vaccines to be distributed based on that ability for throughput. But I think that's a very important point, because otherwise we're just right back where we started. So Bob, I'm going to let you finagle that in the background while we're having comments, if that's okay. Ms. Ritter, and then I'll go to you, Mayor Pons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't agree more with Ms. Doyle. But I have a couple questions that you might be able to answer for me before I give my comment. Number one, how many actual districts are within our region? Ms. Bunning, do you know that? I mean, are we a specific region? Are you dealing with each local entity?
So I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize for not knowing that. Some cities have their own health district. Hampton used to have its own health district, but the state, without really asking us if we wanted it, merged us with the Peninsula Health District, which already had 5 other localities. So today we have staff that serve the same 6 localities. Others may only have 1. And I'm not familiar with each and how they're structured currently to answer your question on the spot. I apologize.
Oh, that's perfectly all right. But I'm not sure. I remember hearing the governor say that 11 districts would be able to move up. So I apologize about my phone, but you all know how that goes. Anyway, if we could find that out. Also, a question I would ask, it might be my guess, and those of all the rest of you who may have been involved with the military most of their lives, that's probably a federal allocation to the Naval Hospital and has nothing to do with the allocation to Virginia, would be my guess.
Yes, but we we want to be able to get the counts, because when the state shows the dashboard, if they don't show how many people that the federal government is vaccinating, it's going to underrepresent how many vaccines are being done in our region. So that's why we were wanting some clarification. I do think you're correct. I think it is a federal allocation, and it's great that we have those federal facilities, because we are vaccinating more people than it appears that we're vaccinating, because so many are able to get it at Portsmouth Naval or other health facilities.
Right, but I think it's important to clarify there that that does not affect the state distribution. So
Correct.
it's a federal distribution. Let's say 300,000 people have been vaccinated, but that did not come from Virginia's allocation. You know, I think in any way to make it look like it did is kind of not helpful to us getting more vaccine here for non-military. And my husband tried to get in at Portsmouth Naval and was not able to, and he's a disabled retired veteran. So I would say that.
Ms. Ritter, can I share my screen? It'll give you an idea of what the health districts, would that be helpful?
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
I do want to thank you all again for your initiative. So these are, all right, the names are all there. Okay.
Right. And if you'll go on this, one of the things you'll note that much of our region is in light blue, which
Yeah.
means we are in 1A. And to the point that was made earlier, we are singled out. Is Chesapeake in 1B now or 1A still? I think there's still some confusion about that as well.
Mr. Price, can you answer that? I think we're in 1B.
We are in both. So it's been widely reported that we've moved into 1B because teachers, which are, according to the strict guidance, part of the 1B protocol. However, for whatever reason, our local health district chose to accelerate teachers over some of the other folks in 1A. So we have our feet firmly planted in 1A and a toe dipped in 1B.
So I think this just points out and illustrates the challenges that we are having. And when a public health administrator district, a local district person in Chesapeake gets to choose how 1A and 1B are defined. And so there's a lot of folks who live in one city and work at another place. Yes, Mr. Crum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Ritter, I just wanted to give you a specific number that I think highlights our challenges. We have 7 different health districts in Hampton Roads, 7. And we have some localities that their partners in their health districts are with localities not in our region, which even can become more complicated. So if it's 7 different health districts, Ms. Ritter, that's a great question.
And
Thank
Mr. Crum, as I understand it, I think in Fairfax County, the health district does actually by code report to the county as opposed to most report to VDH at the state level.
That's correct. And I'm looking to Mr. Price, who knows Northern Virginia very well on that, Madam Chair, if I may ask.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct. They actually went through a process a few years ago requesting permission from the state to transition their health department from a state entity to a county entity.
And they were one of the first to go to 1B. So we'll just connect those dots.
I do want to just say thank you. And I think you would have the full support, for at least from our city. I begrudge no one this vaccination. And I think every single person that has access should be given it. We're also concerned. One more question. I don't want to range into all the complaints that we all have, but and you know, it's me, so I don't mind saying this. Are you copying this to Dr. Avula?
I believe we are. And I think in addition, it's our intent to send it to the Hampton Roads delegation as well, because I think our state senators and state delegates need to be aware of these concerns. And I don't believe they understand the gravity of the situation.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent, excellent approach. I don't think anyone at the, in the stratosphere understands what all of us are trying to do for the people we work for. They must be just too far removed, and they're getting the vaccine. So thank you all very much for your initiative. Most appreciated.
Thank you. Mayor or Ella Ward, Dr. Ward, I think you had your hand up next, and then I'm going to go to Mayor Dyer, who has this little hand going on. Dr. Ward, can you unmute yourself, please?
I'll be very brief. I certainly support the letter, and I'm wanting to ask, do we know how many actual, vaccinations that we have in the region or that we have received? Do we know a number? Is that even something that we are aware of? It's a little difficult in distribution if we don't even know how many we have or how many we're expected to get. And is that something that we are knowledgeable of within the next week or so? I know the governor is speaking today too, but do we have any specific numbers? Because I keep hearing that maybe some districts are getting more than we are. Do we know how many we're getting or how many we have on hand? Or are we able to? I know there's a group that's going to be receiving vaccinations, I guess, on Monday in Chesapeake, but do we actually know that we have enough? I mean, but you definitely don't have enough, but can we really know how many we actually have to get into arms of people? Because there is a need. And I support the letter.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think there's you heard from Mary already, and she talked about the entire Peninsula Health District at just over 1,000 a week.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Norfolk and Virginia Beach if Dr. Filer or Patrick Dehaney are on. You shared numbers yesterday with us from Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So if you could please provide that information in context, I'd ask if one of them could please share. I see Patrick is on there.
Yeah,
Bob, if I, Patrick and Bob, let me just clarify that the 1,000 is what's coming to the health district. That does not count what the hospital systems are getting directly. So I don't want there to be any confusion.
Thank you, Mary. Patrick?
Yeah, and to clarify what Mary said, this is what's coming specifically to Virginia Beach in our vaccination efforts. And we've been told we're going to get between 5,500 and 5,800 weekly, and Norfolk, and speaking for Chip mentioned that he was hearing that they're going to get about 7,000 weekly as well. Definitely that is not sufficient for the size of our population. And then similar to Mary's point, their population altogether combined dwarfs us, and they're getting only 1,000 a week. So that is really the paramount source of our concern, is that based on these numbers, and again, it's not counting what the health systems are getting as well. It just seems like it's going to be a dramatic amount of time before we're able to inoculate and vaccinate our population and get everybody back to normal.
And Chip, I see you're on there too, Madam Chair, if you don't mind me calling for Dr. Filer.
Sure.
Yeah, Bob, I mean, I think this is where, and I agree, we might need to wordsmith the throughput piece of this, but so the clinic we have set up, the number we're getting per week matches pretty much directly up with what we think we can do a week. But what I think we're hearing from other localities, so from that standpoint, I think for Norfolk, we're in a good spot. But I think what we're hearing from Mary, from Patrick, and from some of these other localities is they're way out of whack with what they think they have in terms of capacity at clinics to vaccinate and how much vaccine they're actually getting. And I think that's why, I think this throughput language, however you wordsmith it and make it, to Mary's point that, we could also ramp it up if we had more stuff, that's absolutely true. But just even at the start of this, I think there has to be a better connection between what the vaccination capabilities in a health clinic are in the health district and the amount that they're getting. And that's where I think you're hearing from Patrick and Mary and others. They're way off. We're going to be lucky. I think we're going to be right about what we think we can do given the capacity at our Macy's building, which will open on Monday.
And Scott, thank you for providing a possible revision that's in the chat for those who want to take a look at that. Why don't you all take a gander at that? I think that may address what we're talking about. Mayor Dyer, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I certainly support the letter. And I really think there has to be a sense of urgency about this for a number of reasons. I did send a letter to the governor just last week. And, once again, I think the priority is that we have the population in general, but especially the at-risk population, especially with the age and the high comorbidities, are obviously the priority. But I also pointed out to the governor the unintended or the collateral challenges we have with the COVID. And, I think we as all communities are seeing spikes in depression, suicide, increased alcohol, drug abuse, domestic violence. And, the new wrinkle now is the children that are home and missing a very, very vital part of their education. So trying to get the teachers, vaccinated is also a priority. But the other thing that we have to look at too, especially in the planning commission and the cities that are in fight for survival right now, is that the economic consequences of getting back safely as soon as humanly possible, for our economic viability reasons, not only as a region, but as cities too. So whatever we can do, and I think, the supplies that we're getting, is inadequate. We asked the governor for more latitude about how we can more expediently, get the shots into the arms. From what I understand, our friends in West Virginia did things kind of on their own and went outside of the realm of the rules and were able to do things pretty quickly. And our neighbors to the south in North Carolina are doing things more effectively and efficiently. So once again, I think the letter is spot on. And I think we have to really convey the sense of urgency that we all have for a multitude of reasons. And, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. I wanted to point out two things that I have a particular concern about. They're highlighted in the letter, but just as you all, I think we need to amplify. Mr. Duhaney, you pointed out that the fact of the matter is with the supplies right now, our population is not going to be vaccinated fully for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. The good news is we are at the beginning of a marathon and we can make some adjustments now, but we have definitely failed the 100-yard dash. I'm going to thank you, Chip Filer, for that analogy. The problem is that folks are being tested. We are diverting in the public health districts all of the resources for staff that is now going to vaccine distribution. And so we no longer have testing resources for staff. We can't give up on that testing, not with the knowledge that we have 4, 5, 6 months before everybody is vaccinated. So I think that one, to the extent that we can highlight that more, I will tell you, having spoken to a handful of legislators, they have no idea about this. So we've got to elevate this issue of ensuring that more funds are provided to our local health districts, or we need to be able to get more folks testing from the MRC and from other resources. That's number one. Number two is I'm very, very concerned about the registration process. We had a major failure that happened in our region, and we have 3 private schools that were able to come in through the registration process and provide their entire staffs to get vaccinated, because there is a loophole, and we've got to address that sooner rather than later. We want everybody to get vaccinated, absolutely. So to Ms. Ritter's point, we don't want to begrudge anybody that opportunity, but we need to get our kids back in school, and we need those school systems where they're not in school. Those teachers, I think, need to be prioritized. And the fact that this happened was, as I understand it, a technical glitch. And that has got to be part of the process too, that we need the resources to ensure that that registration system is updated and working properly, because that is a big hurdle as well. Mayor Dyer, you had another hand raised, or are you still, your hand is still raised, or is that, you're good?
Thank you very much. I think you're spot on, and thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Other comments, and then we'll get to the point where we'll need to take a vote to pass this along. Yes, Mayor Pons from Williamsburg.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. I love your efforts in this letter. I think it's very well organized, very well written. Might be a tad long. Sometimes long letters get lost in piles. And I was glad the answer to Ms. Ritter's question that we will be reaching out to our local delegations to kind of amplify this message. You know, it has been very frustrating. I'm not very confident that, you know, this is going to reach the governor's desk and make a difference. And maybe that's a little naive in me, but I just wonder if there shouldn't be additional letters maybe written from each of the local jurisdictions as well, signed by their chief administrators and mayors or chairs, if that would be helpful, or would that just complicate the matter? Thank you.
Bob, I'm going to defer to you. My gut says the more the merrier.
I agree. I think this takes a village. Madam Chair, I did want to be certain everybody was clear on our intention. Should the commission approve this today, we would then make some of these revisions. I appreciate Scott Stevens and Mary Bunning both providing some language. If you could take a look at Scott's language in the chat, that will help us with that throughput issue. But following this meeting this afternoon, we would then revise the letter with Ms. McClellan and Mr. Jenkins' approval, affix their electronic signatures. Ms. Arledge would email that up to the governor's staff today, this afternoon. We intend to copy our entire Hampton Roads caucus, all of our delegates, and all of our senators. And Madam Chair, I wanted to Mayor Pons' point, and I want to be very clear on this. I would recommend that you give staff an okay to issue a press release with this letter too. I think I'm not trying to be sensational. I'm trying to be impactful. I think by getting this out in the media, that will generate the attention that will generate the action we all desire. So I want to be clear that everybody agrees with that approach, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Bob. If there's no other discussion, I don't want to turn to next agenda item too soon, but I do want to be cognizant of the time, and I want to make sure that we take a vote on this action. So if there's no other discussion, if you could just unmute yourself if there's anybody else who wants to make a comment.
Oh.
Okay. So hearing none, Bob, the vote that I'd like to propose we take is a vote to take action on sending the letter with the revisions that have been provided by Mr. Stevens. And that would be also sent to the entire delegation, the state delegation, as well as a press release would be issued.
I so move.
Second, Ella Ward, Chesapeake.
Courtney Doyle was primary.
Thank you. So it's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion or question? Okay, without hearing any there, Kelly, could you please do a roll call vote?
City of Chesapeake, Mr. Best.
Yes.
Ms. Ritter.
Yes.
Dr.
Yes
Ward.
and yes.
Aye. For all of it. Aye.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mr. Geis.
Yes.
Mayor Franklin, Mayor Rabel.
Aye.
Ms. Jarrett.
Aye.
Gloucester, Mr. Pisani. Mr. Fedors.
Aye.
Hampton, Mayor Tuck.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Bunting.
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty.
Aye.
Mr. Keaton.
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. Stevens.
Aye.
Newport News, Mr. Jenkins.
Aye.
Mayor Price.
Aye.
Ms. Rolfe.
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander. Ms. Doyle.
Aye. And Bob, I do support this going to the media this afternoon as well. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
Thanks to all. Aye.
Ms. McClellan.
Aye.
Dr. Filer. Pecosin, Mayor Helsel. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Portsmouth, Mayor Glover. Mr. Pace.
Aye.
Smithfield, Mayor Williams. Mr. Stallings.
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette. Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Suffolk, Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Mr. Moore. Surrey, Mr. Elliott. Ms. Rollins.
Aye. Aye.
Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer.
Aye, and yes to press release.
Ms. Henley. Mr. Jones. Mr. Tower.
Aye and aye.
Ms. Wilson. Ms. Wooten.
Aye.
Mr. Duhaney.
Aye.
Williamsburg, Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Mr. Trivett.
Aye.
York, Ms. Knoll.
Yes.
Mr. Morgan.
Aye.
That concludes the roll call.
Ms. Arledge, does the motion carry?
Yes, sir, it does.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, back to you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I'd like to note that that had unanimous approval. And I think coming together as a region, if there's one thing that this Planning District Commission should be doing, it is exactly this issue. And I appreciate everybody's support and amazing comments today. And Bob, thank you for you and your staff, and Mary, to you and the CAOs for getting so much of this going. So Bob, I'd like for you to also be on point for any communication that comes back from the governor's office to make sure that we receive that within the commission as well. And if we have any press, we'll also make sure that everybody in the commission has the opportunity to see any sort of follow-up in that regard too. Okay, great.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Ritter, yes.
I just would like to ask a question or maybe pose a challenge to our CAOs or subcommittees that we get together, or they get together, the professionals, and if we don't currently have a regional plan that can be submitted, that they, over the next several weeks or months, develop that so that should this happen in the future, or should we see another explosion, we would have a plan ready that we could submit to the state. Do you think that would be possible?
Ms. Ritter, I think one of the items that's in this letter is the idea of working with BDEMS. And I imagine there is a regional planning component to the Department of Emergency Management, but I'm going to defer to Bob and Mary and the others.
Steve Best may know that answer too, because I know he's been active with that group.
Madam Chair, I hope you can hear me. Yes, this region has had a very robust planning effort since.
Mr. Best, I'm sorry, but your audio is a little challenging. So Mary, I think Mary wanted to make a comment.
I was just going to say that I do think every locality has a individual plan for mass vaccinations and or mass drug distributions. And we've practiced this over the years with our emergency management planning. We've had to look at how we would do mass distribution of medications, for instance, and each of us in our own time and way have practiced those things as part of our larger emergency management plan. And that's why we've been so frustrated, because we knew the logistics of setting up a clinic and how we could run a clinic and get going. And we were able to pull the resources together so quickly because we do practice these things. I don't think that has all been integrated into one document as a region that incorporates each of our individual localities' planning efforts. But I without speaking for every one of the 17 managers, I feel certain we've all have our own plan component for how we do these things that we could easily, share and assimilate if you all want to see it in kind of one document for the region.
Well, it's good to hear about these plans, and a bit of a head scratcher if these already exist, why we're not utilizing them. But perhaps this effort will shake some of those free. those resources. So, okay, if it's okay with everybody else, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item, which is the Hampton Roads Economic Forecast. And Greg Grutendorst is going to have the great opportunity to try and explain to all of us what our economy is going to look like post-pandemic. So I will turn it over to him. No pressure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No pressure taken. I'm going to share my screen with you all. And hopefully everyone can see it. Is this working?
Yes, it is, Greg. You're up.
Fantastic. You know, I've said this in times past. We've been doing presentations on the forecast each January since 1990. And really, the importance of the presentation, I think, isn't the forecast. If you go back and look at my 2020 forecast, it was not correct in any matter. And forecasts by economists are typically not very much on target. So really what I'd like to talk to you about is more the lay of the land and what we see moving forward. I want to just take a minute. You know, economists have a way with words and numbers, and we gloss over what's really happening. And we talk about COVID as an exogenous event without sometimes recognizing that each job is a person's livelihood and each death is someone's loved one. And I don't want that to be missed in this presentation at all. With that said, and in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward rather quickly. Feel free to ask me any questions during the presentation, but certainly you're more than welcome to reach out to me afterwards. Just quickly looking at the nation, we see what's happened with the stock market, and the stock market, as you all are aware, has been doing extraordinarily well, even in the face of COVID. And I think this really represents sometimes the difference between Main Street and Wall Street. If we look at gross domestic product at the national level, we can start to understand just the impact that COVID has had on the economy, certainly looking at how quickly we bumped back up compared to the Great Recession, which happened in 2007 on the left hand of the chart. You could really see we had a real significant bounce back, but we remained 3.5% below where we were prior to the COVID recession. The U.S. unemployment rate, the headline numbers that you see, we had a very long trend in the unemployment rate, decreasing down to 3.5% below COVID. We jumped up to 14.7%, and right now we're sitting at almost double the pre-recession unemployment rate. Here again, you can see just the vast difference in the nature of the Great Recession versus this current recession that we're in. I'll talk a little bit more about labor force in a bit, but let's move on to the civilian employment. Here again, you can see really kind of what has happened. We saw the significant drop, first a little drop in February, then a huge drop March and April. We saw the bounce back come up pretty quick, and this is really kind of what economists expected. Moving forward, we had the initial shutdown and kind of a readjustment. What's much more difficult to understand is where we go moving forward from here. So the initial bounce back was, you know, kind of what we foresaw coming. If we look specifically at employment in 2020, you can see we lost 22.2 million jobs and we regained 12.3 million of those. We're still 10 million jobs down. But what I really want to draw your attention here is if you see from November to December, these are seasonally adjusted, so you can compare from month to month. We actually saw an employment decrease. So we came back, and you know, I think that the first shot in the arm here is we really got a big chunk of our jobs back, but moving forward, the jobs are going to be much slower to come forward. And if we want to compare against other recessions, you all have seen this chart a number of times. With the Great Recession, we saw how much different that recession was than other post-World War II recessions. And you can see even from 1990 and the 2001 recession, the COVID recession is really, I mean, the word for it is unprecedented. And I think moving forward, that's the word too. We really don't know what to expect here because there's been such a significant shift. When we look at employment at the national level, we only had 2 industries that actually saw growth over the past year. That's December from 2019 to 2020. That was federal government and then finance and insurance. All the other industries saw realized losses. And if you look at the bottom of your screen there, you can no surprise that leisure and hospitality has really taken this hard. Education and health services, the health implications, a lot of people thought that, you know, health services would be up, but they have been cut significantly. And of course, professional business services, manufacturing, local government there are as well. Moving towards Hampton Roads really quickly, if we look at how Hampton Roads has fared going back to the Great Recession and then the current recession, I've showed you all this chart a number of times, but you can see that Hampton Roads really had a tough time recovering from the Great Recession, much different than that of the nation. The nation, you know, we saw 2 years of decline, and then we saw really consistent and steady progress right up until COVID, where we dropped and came back about halfway up again. Hampton Roads also saw the same drop after COVID. And right now we are actually, if we look at civilian employment, we are below where we were pre-Great Recession. So Hampton Roads' experience in the most recent recession is a little bit different. You know, the long, slow, hard trek we had coming out of the Great Recession, if we look at these years over the past decade, from 2009 to 2014, our economy actually shrank by 0.4%. In the last couple of years, we've seen 1.3% growth in the economy, and majority of that has been due to reintroduction of federal spending back in the region, specifically contracts. So our private sector has had a really difficult time growing jobs since the Great Recession. And so this long, slow trek that we've had out of the Great Recession puts us certainly at a disadvantage when compared to peer regions. I compared Hampton Roads to the other 39 metropolitan areas that have a population between 1 and 4 million. And we rank in the bottom 10% of employment growth, income growth, wage per worker growth, population growth, pretty much in every category over the last, if we averaged the last 3 years in the last decade. So Hampton Roads certainly is struggling. If we look at what has happened over the past decade in Hampton Roads, and this of course takes into account the current pandemic, we look at, we've seen some significant growth in the healthcare industry. You know, all across the nation, you've seen huge gains in healthcare employment over the last decade, and that's no different here. Scientific and technical really has grown here because of federal contracts, federal dollars coming in that has really supported the region. Federal government, leisure and hospitality has done surprisingly well in Hampton Roads, even over the past decade, and I'll talk a little bit about recently. And then in manufacturing, which and transportation, construction, we're all excited about. We got a lot of construction going on, which has helped now. If we look on the bottom end, we know local government has been hurting. Administrative and support positions have been hurting, especially recently. Moving over to the past year, we can see Hampton Roads is a little bit different. We have 4 industries that actually have seen growth in the past year. You know, $5 billion in construction projects will get you construction jobs. And we have more people in the building permits are actually up for the region. Like most other regions, federal government has been increasing, and that's helped us out as well too. But again, it comes down to a lot of the contracts that we get through the government that have boosted scientific and technical. If you look at the other end, a lot of the jobs that have been lost and have not come back to the economy are in the administrative and support positions. Local government continues to be hurt, of course. The healthcare, retail trade, we saw significant cuts. And unfortunately, a lot of those retail trade jobs might not be coming back. Leisure and hospitality has taken a hit. as has manufacturing. This chart, Catherine Raynon put this together for the last monthly that we had, and I can't spend a lot of time on it here, but it might be worth going back and looking at. If you look at the bar, that compares all the metropolitan areas between 1 and 4 million, their range of experiences over the past year. The blue horizontal bar is the MSA average for those regions, and the red dot is Hampton Roads. And that just lets you know what the average experience has been in metro areas and how Hampton Roads has compared. So if you look at the federal government, the first one on the left side, we're pretty much right where most regions are. I want to take you all the way over to the last one, leisure and hospitality. In this one, Hampton Roads fared the best out of all metropolitan areas between 1 and 4 million. We've had even though we're hurting in the leisure and hospitality industry, we essentially have hurt the least. So everybody is lost in that category. The experience in Hampton Roads is not uniform. Certainly the historic triangle has been hurt more than Hampton Roads, but this is probably something worth going back and looking at. And if you haven't seen Catherine's latest monthly, it's certainly worth a read. Just real quickly on unemployment rates, the unemployment rate in and of itself is rather useless, but the trend is informative. And if we look at this, we can see how Hampton Roads compares with Virginia and the US. We've certainly seen that initial decline. The real question is, where do we go from here, especially when we're looking at our workforce? You know, we've done this initial unemployment claims chart for years and years and years. And if you go back as far as we have back to the 80s, I only have it going back to 2005 here. Those little bumps on the bottom that are almost imperceptible now are really what we were using to inform us of what's going to happen next. And we really had to adjust the chart just to include what happened with COVID. This was just unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it. We are actually able to get the Virginia Employment Commission to open up their initial weekly unemployment claims data, which they never had before, to give us kind of a better understanding of what exactly is going on. And we can see how quickly those continued unemployment claims jump up. If you look at the blue bar on the bottom, you can also see the impact of CARES Act funding and what's going on with federal programs. They certainly do impact us here. They impact decision makers and what people are doing. I just want one other thing to take a note of here. At the very end, the December, January, you can see that initial unemployment claims are once again going up. That is true at the national level as well. Actually, at the national level, they just went up this past week. We've been going up for 2 weeks, and that goes in line with the employment drops that we're seeing. So it's almost, you know, we saw our initial bounce back, and now I think we're taking a little bit of a pause. That is very disconcerting. We look at civilian labor force in Hampton Roads. Quickly, the non-civilian labor force has held really steady this year. But just looking at civilian labor force, what has happened? You can see how significant of a shift it is. We've lost almost 30,000 people from our labor force. That's almost like 3 Oceanas just leaving in terms of employment from the labor force. We initially lost almost 50,000 people employed. We regained a lot of those, but our unemployment numbers are up 20,000. But this is going to take significant work as people readjust to life post-COVID. If we're looking at per capita income, this data is now a little bit dated. You know, we don't know what's going to happen moving forward, but I just wanted to point out how difficult a time Hampton Roads has increasing wages and income, especially relative to the nation. So if we look at that black bar, anytime we're under that black bar, we have the pink bar, that's where we're less, our per capita income is below that of the nation. And especially going back to 2009, you can see that we've been sliding significantly. In fact, we bumped up above the federal level in 2009, not because our incomes went up. We bumped up because the federal incomes, national incomes dropped following the recession more than ours did. So that's what made us look good. But really, we are struggling to increase wages in this region, and it really needs to be a focus. Of course, one of the main things that impacts wages, income, as well as population is defense outlays. And in this chart, you can see how cyclical those outlays have been. They play an important role in the region, and you can see whenever there's been a buildup in defense spending, we've seen significant population increases in Hampton Roads, and then a drawdown, it flattens out. In fact, 1979, following the Vietnam drawdown, was the first time we had seen population decrease in Hampton Roads. But what happened recently with the war on terror is, we saw a huge buildup in defense expenditures, but it was defense expenditures that went to contracting, and we did not see an increase in military personnel. In fact, we saw a decrease in military personnel. And the huge increase in defense spending did not correlate with population increases in Hampton Road. In fact, 2018, we saw our second ever decrease in Hampton Road's population. So the way defense and expenditures impact the region is changing significantly. That said, the DoD presence in Hampton Roads since 2017 is really what is kind of buoying our economy. Like I said before, we have not seen a whole lot of growth in the private sector, but the defense contracts increasing, the military personnel not decreasing, but kind of slowing the decrease. We saw a slight increase in 2019, and military personnel incomes have been helping our region grow in recent years. I'll talk just very briefly about the port. As you all are aware, the port in Hampton Roads has done relatively well over recent years. The pandemic hit them like most anyone else, but in September they set a record for September and October through the traffic through the port in terms of TEU. So the ports have kind of bounced back and are operating well. If we look at tourism, I talked about this a little bit before. Hampton Roads has a very mature tourism industry, so we don't expect to see a whole lot of growth here. But I think over the past decade, what has just been really positive to see is how our localities have really been pushing the shoulder seasons and doing different events so as to increase tourism in Hampton Roads. And we've seen that with hotel revenue up 5%, employment up, the tourism expenditures are all up. So that has been positive. Again, this past year, we saw a decrease. We don't have these numbers in yet, but as we compare to other metro areas, our decrease was nowhere near what we've seen in other metro areas. Looking at Hampton Roads retail sales, this has been really kind of a fascinating thing to follow. We expected retail sales to drop more significantly, and instead they've just increased way more than we ever thought they would. A lot of what this retail sales data is telling us is, if we look back, we see this growth rate of 2.3% since 2006, which comes down significantly with once you adjust for inflation. But recently what we've seen is huge increase in retail sales, not because people are buying more, but because we are able to tax the items that they're purchasing. So prior to, if you went back to 2010, we weren't taxing any internet sales. And slowly we began taxing internet sales, and we were doing that pretty significantly along the lines of Amazon and some cases that went through. And then 18 months ago, I believe it was Wayfair versus South Dakota, Supreme Court case came through. And this has really helped the localities, not just in Hampton Roads and Virginia, but across the nation, do really, really well during a pandemic where we were able to tax internet sales. And the budget directors are extremely grateful for this, because suddenly all these online expenditures that but for Wayfair would not have been taxed during the pandemic were taxed. So localities just saw a real significant shift in the taxation of retail sales. It was almost fluky that we got the Wayfair South Dakota Supreme Court case in when we did, because otherwise things would have been really difficult for our localities. Real quickly on real estate, the home price index growth kind of shows how Hampton Roads has compared to Virginia and US going all the way back to 2005. We saw the huge increase in housing prices, and we're almost back to where we were on this housing price index. Housing has been extremely hot lately in Hampton roads, and not just here, but across the nation. These are median sales prices from the Real Estate Investment Network. And finally, in 2019, we actually surpassed where we were in 2007. But look at the significant jump from 2019 to 2020. That is a really, really big jump. The housing market is incredibly hot right now. As those in real estate will tell you, it is very much a seller's market. The number of days on the market has shrunk so significantly. It's almost matching where we were in 2005. 4 weeks of being on the market, and your home is essentially sold. But there's a lot that's going on in the housing industry that is of concern. The problem is we just don't see it. We know it's there. A lot is falling through the cracks. And unfortunately, we've had a number of discussions about this, not just at the PDC, but in the region. And we know that evictions are taking place in spite of the moratorium. We know that people are being forced out. We know that we're seeing an increase in squatters. We know that rents are going up. There's another piece in the monthly showing how rents have gone up in Hampton Roads, where you're seeing rents decline in major cities like New York and LA and San Fran. But there is a lot that is going on in the housing market that we just don't quite understand yet. We don't have the information. So while a lot of us are seeing real estate go up and housing values go up, there's a lot of people that are less fortunate that are not experiencing this and are having significant problems. So looking ahead, a couple of areas of concern. Of course, the most significant is the continued health risks. Nothing is more important than well-being and quality of life. GDP, income growth, none of that really matters without quality of life. And certainly when we're looking forward, we don't know what's going to happen. We're looking at the CHI model in terms of what we think is going to happen, but these forecasts have been off. There's a lot of people that are just terrified and scared to get outside, and with good reason. So we don't know. I think that's just the main takeaway is we really have no idea what's going to happen. We can speculate, and as Mayor Dyer said, nothing's more important than getting COVID under control so that we can kind of move the economy forward. But first and foremost, we want to look at that, the well-being and quality of life. Disparity has been increasing significantly. A lot of you, I'm sure, have heard of, reference to a K-shaped recovery. Certainly, the first slide I showed you talked about how Wall Street's doing. People who look at their portfolios are doing incredibly well. On the other hand, people are falling through the cracks, and the most disadvantaged among us are having an incredibly difficult time. So that K-shaped recovery, I think, is really true. Disparity is becoming more significant, and there's going to be a lot of help needed to help those with the least means recover here. Structural unemployment, this is going to be a tough one. We had a real structural unemployment problem with the last recession, and now we have a different one. So it's going to be very, we don't know how exactly we're going to recover. Like I said, we saw the initial bounce back, but where we go from here is very, very unclear. The ballooning debt and deficit I'll talk about in a little bit. Small businesses in Hampton Roads have had a very difficult time over the past decade, especially as compared to other metro areas, but they have really taken it hard in Hampton Roads during this pandemic. Another one is local revenues. I've talked to a lot of your budget directors from localities in recent weeks about what they're seeing and what their expectations are. And I think one of the takeaways is they're all expecting a very delayed impact. So this past year was not as bad as expectations were. Real estate prices have really held high, and that's been fantastic for localities. As I mentioned, the sales tax, we didn't really get hit because of Wayfair South Dakota Supreme Court ruling. But moving forward, we know there are significant issues, and this is going to be trying for localities. And the budget directors, even at the state level, it's very unclear what budgets are going to look like moving forward. So glimmers of hope, vaccinations, vaccination, the discussion you just all had on vaccinations is extremely important. The rollout is important. My wife works at the ER at Centera Lee, and I hear about this every day about how this rollout is going and what people are going through here. We are moving forward. I'm excited that the PDC is pushing to assist with this, but this is really key. Without vaccinations, we're not going to see normalcy. Without addressing what's going on with COVID, we won't see normalcy. And just how soon that happens will be all important as we look to 2021. We are seeing some positive restructuring in the economy. We talked about structural unemployment. Some of the restructuring would have never been done but for COVID. So hopefully we can take advantage of that. Low interest rates are here. We have a strong housing market, and then the short-term federal expenditures for the region are good. Quick forecast of U.S. gross domestic product. If economists shouldn't forecast, but here the forecasts are anyways. You can just see in the first quarter of 2020, the second quarter of 2020, how that compares to what we have moving forward. Most economists think that we'll be back where we were in Q4 of 2019 by the second or the third quarter of this year. And then it kind of slows. I put this chart in just so you can see how incredibly unprecedented the second and third quarter growth rates were. But if we get rid of those because they're not really useful here, the expectation is we're going to see a little bit of a bump coming into the third and fourth quarter of Q3. But when we look out to 2022, we're going to settle back down into kind of the low growth rates that we've seen in the past. The forecast for 2021, the blue chip consensus forecast for real GDP is we're going to see a bit of a bump to 4.2%. That's pretty high, but a lot of that is just relative to 2020. Interest rates, like I said, short-term government rates are going to be very, very low. Long-term rates are going to are expected to remain very low. In Hampton Roads, because I think we didn't have a significant drop as we did at the national level, Hampton Roads fared better in this COVID recession than most of our MSA peers in the nation overall. But we're not going to see a significant bounce because we're not going to see significant revenues increases other than what we saw with the federal government. I think the civilian employment is just going to continue to struggle to come back as we work through COVID. Unemployment rate will decrease. Retail sales, we've seen some pretty significant gains in retail sales. Of course, like I said, that's due to the Supreme Court decision, but the impacts of that are wearing off. So retail sales moving forward is going to slow down. And if we look at the value of building permits, we've been bouncing that around there quite a bit lately. I expect we'll have a little bit of growth still for us in 2021. Quick discussion about the federal budget. If we look at this is probably the most concerning thing looking beyond 2021. At some point, we're going to have to rein in spending, and you can see exactly what's happening with the budget balance here. National debt held by the public as a percent of gross product. We're going back to World War II, and we're hitting those heights. And you all remember just how much sequestration impacted Hampton Roads. Along my feed the last couple of days, I'm suddenly starting to hear all about the federal budget and the deficit. And that's not something we've heard for several years. So certainly I think that those discussions, debt and deficit, are going to start up again in Washington, and that can certainly impact us. I started talking about COVID. I'll end with COVID. One of the things we look at constantly here is how is Hampton Roads doing and how does it compare with Virginia and the US? And you can see we saw that pretty significant bump of cases in July in Hampton Roads and how that compared to the US and Virginia. And then if you look at the number of people that have passed due to COVID, you can see that bump in cases was followed by a bump in the number of people passing away. And certainly the trends that we're looking at right now are not positive trends. I would encourage you, our GIS guru here, Sarah Kidd, has put this website together. If you have not had a chance to look on it, there's data for Hampton Roads, but each of your localities is also on here. So if you want to look at Franklin or you want to look at James City, you can just click on data for your locality and it's there as well, and you can track this data. That concludes my remarks. I just want to end a little bit on a positive note here. We do have a lot of ongoing regional initiatives that are very positive, and Bob and the PDC are really involved in there. Like I said, we have $5 billion worth of infrastructure projects going on, interconnected fiber network, really excited about. Keith has been working on economic development sites, inventory and readiness, and we're seeing a lot happening in that. Regional branding initiative, restructuring regional economic development. I think that is that the time for that to happen is now, and we're moving forward on that. And of course, revenue sharing model you've heard about, and offshore wind has very exciting prospects. So that concludes my comments, and I'd be happy to take any questions now or later if you want to send me an email or reach out to Bob. Thank you.
Bob, so I think we need to, I don't want to stifle discussion, but we do need to vote on this. To have
Yes,
this.
yes, Madam Chair, what we would like to do, and I've been receiving some direct chat messages to me, and the question is, can we get this information and share it with our local elected officials and staff? And the answer is yes. We would like to ask for the PDC to authorize us to go ahead and release this economic forecast report.
Okay.
Move.
It's been moved. Is that a move,
Yes.
Ms. Dr. Ward?
Yes.
Do I have a second on the motion?
Second, William McCarty.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, questions about the report? Greg, great job once again. Only slightly depressing. Anybody else? Okay, I think this is really important information. Thank you all for all the hard work on putting this together, and let's hope those numbers improve. We've got a lot of work to do cut out for us and moving forward for sure. So on that lovely depressing note, I think we need to do a roll call. Ms. Alridge.
Chesapeake, Mr. Best. Ms. Ritter.
Yes.
Dr. Ward.
Aye.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mr. Geis.
Yes.
Franklin, Mayor Rabel.
Aye.
Ms. Jarrett.
Yes.
Gloucester, Mr. Pisani. Mr. Fedors. Hampton, Mayor Tuck. Mr.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye. Mr. Brown saying aye.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Bunting.
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty.
Aye.
Mr. Keaton.
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. Stevens.
Aye.
Newport News, Mr. Jenkins.
Aye.
Mayor Price.
Aye.
Ms. Rolfe.
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander. Ms. Doyle. Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. McClellan.
Aye.
Dr. Filer.
Aye.
Pecosin, Mayor Helsel. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Portsmouth, Mayor Glover.
Aye.
Mr. Pace.
Aye.
Smithfield, Mayor Williams. Mr. Stallings.
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Suffolk, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Moore. Surrey, Mr. Elliott. Ms. Rollins.
Aye.
Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
Ms. Henley. Mr. Jones. Mr. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson, Ms. Wooten,
Aye.
Mr. Duhaney, Williamsburg, Mayor Pons,
Aye.
Mr. Trevette,
Aye.
York, Ms. Knoll,
Yes.
Mr. Morgan.
Aye.
That concludes the roll call.
Ms. Arledge, does the motion carry?
Yes, sir, it does.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. The next item is an important one. I know we've had a very long meeting here, but we've already bumped Katie Cullifer from the last meeting. So I'd like for you all to hopefully stay with us. This is Katie's going to update us on the environmental education program, Ask HR Green. And I think we all can agree the environment is a huge issue for each one of our municipalities. And I think what the PDC is doing is great. And perhaps we can also encourage them to expand the program too in some ways. So can we have Katie present, Bob?
Yes, I think Katie's ready to go. Katie, your PowerPoint is up on the screen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will try to keep it brief as possible. I want to provide just a quick overview of our regional environmental education and public outreach program. Myself and my colleague, Rebecca Estep, have the pleasure of working with a member of your local staff to execute all of our outreach initiatives through this program. We have 4 regional environmental education committees across these various topics of stormwater education, litter prevention, recycling and beautification. We have our water awareness and water conservation team, and our fats, oils, and grease group that is focused on sanitary sewer overflow prevention. These folks have been working together for over 20 years now in some cases on these regional programs. But back in 2011, we brought them all under one roof with the website and the branding of askhrgreen.org. And we also work with representatives from the Hampton Roads Sanitation District in some of these committees. There's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to work together on these initiatives. These topics certainly don't know jurisdictional boundaries. And at the very least, some of the work that we do here helps our localities to fulfill some of the public outreach requirements of their stormwater MS4 permits, their groundwater withdrawal permits, and the special order consent from DEQ to prevent and eliminate sanitary sewer overflows. But generally speaking, it just makes a lot of sense that we would work together to promote different environmental messages, improve our brand awareness. It's better to have consistent messaging across the region, so you're getting the same information where you live and where you work and where you play. By pooling our resources, we have better access to tools. We can work with professional design firms locally to help with our creative design and our website development. We're able to do media campaigns that span the entire region and improve our reach and frequency of getting our message in front of different audiences. And there's the built-in economies of scale there as well for when we're buying media campaigns, when we are purchasing promotional items, and we do a lot of that. We're buying printed materials. Those savings we can pass along to our localities by being able to purchase in bulk. The basics of the Ask HR Green program, our website is certainly the cornerstone. That's why we named the program askhrgreen.org, so that all the branding would lead people right back to the website where they can get more information about whatever topic it is we're promoting. There's a great calendar, a feature on the website where we feature local events that people can participate in, cleanup events they can get involved in, recycling collections, workshops. We also have an online media toolkit where all of our resources live, and anyone could go online, have access to our videos, our brochures, our posters. They can download that information to share them with their own audiences. Traditionally, we do a lot of events and public outreach. It's a good way to reach thousands of citizens across the region. We've obviously had to scale that back in the last year or so, but we look forward to doing more of that in the coming years. We have a 20-foot education trailer we tow out to events. The top picture there, you can see us out at the Suffolk Peanut Festival a couple of years ago. We are volunteers that work in your local jurisdictions, help staff the trailer to interact with the public, We hand out promotional items and informational brochures, and it's just a great touch point for interacting with the community. We get lots of requests from private neighborhoods and schools to come out to their event, and we do our best to accommodate those requests as often as we can. In a typical year, we'll attend 30 or more events across the region. We do have a very active social media campaign, so I'd encourage you to follow Ask HR Green on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and follow along with our videos on YouTube. We are active in public relations. We get to do a lot of media opportunities and interviews with our local media as part of our campaign efforts. And again, I mentioned we purchase a lot of promotional materials that are a great tool for your staff to have to be able to hand out items that we work together to procure. And again, it's a great cost savings that we can do that work together and have that resource available for your local staff to use. We execute about 10 to 12 themed paid media campaigns throughout the year. This is another opportunity that we're able to have because we work together regionally. It's very hard to buy television or radio for one city, but we can buy it regionally. And those campaigns and mass media campaigns are expensive. So by pooling our resources together, we're able to accomplish those types of outreach strategies. And, we do them for all of our committees and a variety of topics. The Grease Grinch here is one of our most popular campaigns we run around the holidays, encouraging people to do the right thing with their fat soils and grease, keep them out of the drain during holiday time when people are preparing lots of meals. We have quite a few opportunities for student outreach and local grants. So our environmental education mini grant program is very popular. We are able to provide up to $500 in environmental education grant funding for local projects, and that's open to any educator or group working with K through 12 students in the region. Last year, we were able to award over $10,000 in those mini grants, which impacted over 8,000 students across the region. We've worked together on green learning education guides for our 3rd graders and 6th graders. We've been able to follow the SOLs and have these distributed to public school students as a great resource for the teachers, and the students love them. They're full of fun puzzles and interactive ways to get people thinking about how their actions affect the environment. And we have a pet waste station grant program also hosted through the regional program that folks can apply to get a free pet waste station to install in their communities with the caveat that they have to install and maintain them on a regular basis. And that's important for keeping that harmful bacteria out of our local waterways. Some of our most successful campaigns over the last couple of years have been more on the creative side. You might be familiar with some of them. Our sidewalk messaging campaign we did a few years ago, where we hid these invisible messages on sidewalks across the region, all environmentally themed, using the special hydrophobic spray. So the messages were there, but they only appeared when wet. So during a rain event, people got surprised to see these environmental messages in unexpected places. We had a pretty minimal budget for this campaign, but because of the popularity and the media exposure, we were able to turn that into a huge value as a regional program. We've also worked together every year with your local representatives on the Great American Cleanup, coordinating regional cleanups in all of our local jurisdictions. This in 2019 was 2 days in May. We were able to engage over 1,000 volunteers, cleaned up 71 public spaces, 15 tons of litter removed from the landscape. And we partnered with a local artist who turned some of the scrap collected into artwork that we then used as a traveling statement to go throughout the region and continue the conversation, encouraging folks to get involved in local cleanup initiatives. We also have celebrated in 2019 a National Awareness Day, Imagine a Day Without Water, by encouraging folks to imagine a day without beer or coffee, 2 things that use water as their primary ingredient. And we thought we'd tap into these natural advocates for clean water by partnering with our local coffee shops and breweries. They distributed custom coffee sleeves and coasters to their customers during this time in October. And we had over 23 local breweries and coffee shops participate in the promotion. It was a great success, and a lot of them continued the effort on their own social media channels, sharing the message with even a wider audience. We've also been working on some special projects over the years. You're probably familiar with the getfloodfluent.org website, flood insurance outreach program. We've worked with our water resources staff and our coastal resiliency committee to help develop that campaign using our existing contacts and resources that we have through the Ask HR Green campaign. More recently, we've worked with our directors of utilities and our water awareness committee to develop some messaging in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Back when businesses started reopening after being shut down, we worked together to develop some regional guidance for those reopening buildings for flushing requirements to make sure that the water that had been sitting stagnant in those buildings was flushed, so it was safe when they reopened to employees and to the public. We were also able to mobilize our existing resources just recently to help develop a campaign related to the Municipal Utility Relief Program. I think Bob mentioned this in his executive director's report earlier. We're able to come up with a secure URL, hrutilityrelief.com, as a central hub for information. We ran some media campaigns, billboard ads, radio and TV ads in order to direct the public to this website where they could find out the rules of the program, who was eligible, and more importantly, how to apply in their city or county. And just briefly, some of the current promotions we're working on. We launched the new year with a new recycling campaign. Start Smart, Recycle Right is the name of the program. We've developed some great resources to help clear up some of the confusion that's out there about municipal recycling programs. We have a wonderful tool on the Ask HR Green website. If you go to askhrgreen.org/recycle, you can click on your community, find out what's recyclable there, what's not, and also other disposal options for things like electronics and household hazardous waste that people often have questions about. That campaign also has a 3-part video series to help educate folks on how to recycle right, what not to recycle, and really what happens in the recycling process and why it's so important. And I'll leave us with just another fun campaign we're working on. We developed some large-scale model cigarette butts that have made their way around the region. We've done some photo shoots with them in notable places across Hampton roads. And this is part of a hashtag No Butts About It campaign that will be running on social media in the coming months. Just building awareness of cigarette litter. It's something that, again, knows no jurisdictional boundaries. It affects all of our communities in the same harmful way. It's the #1 littered item in every litter pickup across the globe, not just here in Hampton Roads. But we want to bring awareness to that, encourage people to do the right thing. And as part of that, we're working on launching a cigarette waste receptacle grant program where businesses can apply for cigarette waste receptacles to install at their businesses to encourage proper disposal when people don't have options there. So look forward to unveiling more of that in the next few months. And I will leave it at that and happy to answer any questions that you might have. Sorry, I kind of flew through that, but I know timing is tight.
Katie, that was amazing. Well done. I know I personally had no idea the extent of everything that you've done and the level of the quality that you have done. Bob, I would say that, this is more than just Ask HR Green. It has become a marketing and communications department for HRPDC. The fact that you all jumped in on the utility relief element. And I have to say, given the conversation we just had about vaccines, I'm wondering if there's a role there too, recognizing it's outside of your purview, but the resources there may be something that we might want to tap into too from a regional messaging. Katie, the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm sorry I'm taking on this mantle here, but I think I would love to see us also expand into energy efficiency as part of what goes on with Ask HR Green. I know that's a huge initiative with the Virginia Clean Economy Act and the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative funding. I think to the extent that we can reduce the energy burden for our constituents, and, especially those in underserved communities, and reduce our carbon footprint at the same time would be great. Bob, I don't know how we would move that forward, or if there's more funding that's needed, or how would something like that work?
Yes, so Madam Chair, a great question. So the way the HR Green program and its subsidiary programs work is it's on a per capita assessment basis supported by the local governments. Madam Chair, we were really excited to have Katie be able to give the overview of Ask HR Green. I might suggest now you receive that information that we might be able to follow up by distributing the PowerPoint that was presented. And then maybe early on next month, I think Katie has earned that since you've been patient with us for a couple months now. Maybe early next month, we could talk about potential opportunities in terms of what might be next for Ask HR Green, if that sounds good. So we would have the time to do that in a comprehensive way.
Sounds good. Any other comments from folks? Katie, thank you for being patient. You and your team have done a great job. I really, you're getting claps and thumbs up all over the checkerboard. So thank you for your hard work. And we really appreciate, Bob. Thank you for the opportunity of the presentation. And we'll get that out to the membership. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Katie, thank you. What Katie and Rebecca do is really nothing short of amazing. We really appreciate their hard work.
That's great. So Bob, the next item is the legislative update.
Yes, so as you can imagine, things evolved quite quickly during General Assembly. So I had some comments prepared, but I'm going to set those aside. Andrew Trivett, I want to thank you for bringing something to my attention about 10 minutes ago. And that's how quick things moved during General Assembly. But Madam Chair and Commission members, this relates very directly to the conversation we just had. Andrew, I'll introduce this, and then Madam Chair, I might ask if Andrew can come in behind me. We're very pleased that Senators Mason and Norman, Senator Monty Mason, Senator Tommy Norman, have introduced Senate Bill 1445. Senate Bill 1445 provides immunity for vaccinators, which is very, very critically important. It allows localities with fire departments or emergency services departments employing full-time non-volunteer emergency medical technicians or paramedics to establish and staff vaccine administration clinics for the purposes of administering COVID-19 vaccines. I could read more detail, but I wanted to introduce that, Madam Chair, and ask if Andrew from Williamsburg, the city manager who gave me this head up with Mary Bunning, if they could add additional comment on this. Andrew?
Sure, thanks, Bob, and I appreciate you bringing this to the attention of the commission on such short notice. So I received this from one of my contacts today while we were meeting, and it's a bill that's been introduced to address an issue that sort of behind the scenes, and this is illustrative of some of the things that your CAO working group has been dealing with regarding the Department of Health and issuing vaccinations on our own, is the issue of immunity. What level of protection does the local government have? What level of protection does the individual employee have when they administer a vaccine on behalf of the locality's EMT, EMS, paramedic service? And so this bill directly addresses that. Now, one of the things that I think this bill does, it gives us the opportunity to add this short paragraph that would more clearly enable the localities to launch their own vaccination clinics using those EMT, EMS, and paramedic providers that we already all employ. It sort of clears the way from an administrative point of view, an operational perspective with the VDH and the state government to set the stage for that to happen. It also allows those localities that are operating those clinics to receive vaccination directly, which is another bottleneck that we've experienced with the Department of Health. So these are just some very minor, seemingly minor issues that we've run into as we've tried to set up some regional clinics on the peninsula. And I think that this bill gives us the opportunity to address them. And as I said to Bob in my email, even if our suggested amendments to the bill are not successful, it will bring these issues to the attention of the legislature in a way that they can be made aware of some of the small bottlenecks that are really slowing down the vaccination effort.
Madam Chair, if I may suggest, and I apologize, I know this is quick, But I will, as soon as we're complete with this meeting, I'm going to push this language out to all the chief administrative officers in the region. Madam Chair, I would really request that this commission consider giving us the ability as the HRPDC to weigh in and support this Senate bill and the amendments that were outlined by Mr. Trivett. I think it's a solution to some of the things. And if we can put our weight behind this and really push it as a region, I think that some of our localities would really be appreciative.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. I think that's wonderful. And that's good news for sure. I'm curious what's going on at the governor's press conference right now too, by the way, but I don't know if anybody's got any updates that they want to share. So, Bob, do you want to have, are there other legislative updates that you want to provide?
I'll just say very quickly, Madam Chair, so that we could weigh in on that item. I think time is of urgence on this item. We would need a motion and a second to do that. And so that we don't lose our quorum, I'd really like to try to do that and provide our CAOs that support.
Sure.
So move.
Second.
Second, Jim Eisenhower.
Chesapeake.
Okay, I'm just going to pick on Jim Eisenhower and Dr. Ella Ward from Chesapeake.
Yeah.
You were the lucky winner of the motion and second.
Exactly. That's going to help us.
And if I may clarify, this will be for our chair and vice chair to be able to send a letter to our General Assembly members in support of the amendments to Senate Bill 1445 that we discussed, Mr. Trivett and I.
That's
okay,
great.
Just to be clear.
Yes.
Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, let's call the roll.
Chesapeake, Mr. Best,
Yes.
Ms. Ritter, Dr. Ward,
Aye.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Geis, Franklin, Mayor Rabel, Ms. Jarrett,
Yes.
Gloucester, Mr. Bazzani, Mr. Fedors, Hampton, Mayor Tuck, Mr. Brown, Ms. Bunting.
Aye.
Excuse me, Mayor Tuck, I was trying to get unmuted. Aye.
Thank you, Mayor Tuck. Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty,
Aye.
Mr. Keaton,
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower,
Aye.
Mr. Stevens,
Aye.
Newport News, Mr. Jenkins,
Aye.
Mayor Price,
Aye.
Ms. Rolfe,
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander, Ms. Doyle, Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. McClellan,
Aye.
Dr. Filer, Pecosa, Mayor Helsel, Mr. Wheeler,
Aye.
Portsmouth, Mayor Glover, Mr. Pace,
Aye.
Smithfield, Mayor Williams, Mr. Stallings,
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette, Mr. Johnson, Suffolk, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Surrey, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Rawlins,
Aye.
Virginia Beach, Mr. Dyer, Mayor Dyer, I'm sorry. Ms. Henley, Mr. Jones, Mr. Tower,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson, Ms. Wooten,
Aye.
Mr. Duhaney, Williamsburg, Mayor Pons,
Aye.
Mr. Trivett,
Aye.
York, Ms. Knoll,
Yes.
Mr. Morgan.
Aye.
Let me count, since we have a lot that were either have left the meeting or have not answered. So let me double check the count.
As Kelly's making that count, I do want to note that the PDC's got a great legislative update website, and it's been really helpful to tracking that. So thank you all, Bob, and your team for putting that out. Kelly?
The motion carries.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We really appreciate the commission responding so quickly. And Andrew Trivett and Mary Bunning, thank you so much for bringing that forward. We're going to focus on the letter to the governor today, Andrew, but tomorrow morning we'll get on this letter of support. I'll be coordinating with you, sir.
Bob, are there any other legislative items as that relates to COVID that we should be aware of?
On COVID, that's the main item I wanted to bring to your attention. I do think as we move forward, one thing I would ask all the HRPDC members to please think about as you're engaging with your local caucus and delegation. I think the item in our letter about the fact that you are running to help, right? You are moving resources around and you're bringing monies out of already budgeted areas into this and shifting it to COVID response and vaccination. I don't think you can remind our General Assembly members enough that the hope is that there will be some reimbursement for you related to that issue. You're all aware this is a short session. Budget amendments happen throughout the session, particularly when you get the budget conferees. I don't think it's too early to start planting those seeds, Madam Chair. So that would be the one comment that I make related to COVID. The second thing I wanted to report on is that there are at least 3 bills in the General Assembly that are advancing legislative priorities of this HRPDC. They include one that is the formation of the Virginia Commonwealth Flooding Board. A second item, and I know Virginia Beach has played a great leadership role in this. I want to thank them and their staff for this, but this has been endorsed by our region as well. That is incorporating resiliency issues into the SMART Scale program. We don't think it's fair in Hampton roads if you make a road more resilient in response to flooding and increase the cost of the project, that you're being penalized for that in the SMART Scale scoring system. So we're really asking for that to be addressed. We have a bill that's making its way through. In fact, it was heard this morning. I'll need to get an update. The governor's administration has offered some friendly amendments, so we're very hopeful on that one. And then the third one, and Madam Chair, I know you've been very involved in this, is we have another bill that's been introduced to amend Virginia's property disclosure requirements to provide disclosure about a property's past history of flooding or flood insurance claims. And we think that's a huge step, and we actually have collaboration happening with the Virginia Association of Realtors. So, Madam Chair, in respect to time, I'll stop there, but just say there's a lot of items that we're monitoring. And in fact, we have commission members advocating for us. So that's very much appreciated.
Great, thank you. And I know this morning, Mayor Tuck, I heard Delegate Ward's bill. I know that was addressing some of the issues you had in terms of properties having tires and all sorts of bad things on them. And that thank you, as well as one from Delegate Guy on the ability at the local level to incorporate requirements for more trees during development and redevelopment to help us with flood mitigation and water quality. That also passed out of the subcommittee. So that was great. Again, I appreciate everybody, your time. You all have been very generous. Bob, we'll be getting these updates regularly. Please, they're filled with great information. So I appreciate your staff there. The next item is just a quick reminder of our 3-month schedule. We have a meeting February 18th. There is no meeting in March, and April 15th will be the next meeting after that. So just want to highlight that for your calendars. And then attached to the items in the packet are the advisory committee meeting summaries. And then Bob, do you want to highlight the last item from the Elizabeth River project?
Thank you so much. I really do. Katie Colfer, could you come back on video a second, please, Katie? I'll probably need you to speak so that you're promoted. You hear me okay, Katie?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So, Madam Chair and PDC members, Katie Colfer, you just heard about her work. Well, in her spare time, she and our building services people have really been working to try to make a difference around the regional building here to make us more sustainable. If you now come to our building, you see things like natural species instead of ornamental plants out front. You see things in terms of we've changed the way we don't use fertilizer now for our landscaping. You see all of our light fixtures here have been transferred from the old light bulbs into LED lighting. You see things that we've done in terms of water refilling stations for water conservation, and on and on and on. And Katie and Andrew Margison, our building services manager, have done a lot of work on that. We've been recognized by the Elizabeth River Project as a sustained distinguished performance River Star business. And that's something we're very proud of. And I just want to thank Katie and the entire team. And if I name them all, I'd leave somebody out. But I'll just say, Katie, thank you for your lead role. And you know, this is very important to us, that we operate in a sustainable way. And we're just very proud, Madam Chair, of this recognition. So thanks for the chance to recognize that.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you for highlighting that. And Katie, again, great job. Great job to the PDC. We really appreciate that. We're going to move on to old and new business. Is there any old business for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none. Any new business for the good of the order? Okay. With that said, Bob, we're looking forward to that letter going out and the press release. So stay tuned, and everybody stay well, stay healthy, stay safe. And thank you for all of your attention today on these very important matters. We'll see you in February. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Be safe. Bye-bye.